Hi, my name's Dylan Burns, and I just got back from Eastern Ukraine. I was out there filming with artillery crews supporting the Zaporozhye counteroffensive, as well as a separate artillery crew defending the Donetsk region from Russian advances. I got a lot of incredible footage, including them working, them receiving counter-battery fire, talking to them about their personal lives, why they do what they do, living in a dugout 24/7, as well as a whole host of other topics. I'm really excited to share that footage with you guys, but that's not today. Today, we need to talk about a different topic, and that's inclusion, specifically including Ukrainians in conversations about their own country. Anytime I turn on cable news, anytime I turn on the radio, anytime I open up a newspaper, I see conversations happening everywhere about Ukraine. But Ukrainians are not often included in those conversations. And that's not just true of cable news, that's also true of alternative media sources as well. I'm talking Twitch and YouTube. And on Twitch, there's one king in political conversation, and that's HasanAbi. And he's talked quite a lot about the war in Ukraine. But I have not seen many conversations with him talking to Ukrainians on his platform. So I thought, due to the fact that many of his conversations had not included Ukrainian perspectives, maybe it could benefit from a Ukrainian perspective. So we gathered 4 people of varying political backgrounds from all across Ukraine, including one former HasanAbi fan, to talk about what Hasan has said about the war, and to include them in the conversation. Now, this isn't a total list of everything Hasan has ever said that they reacted to. We picked what clips that they saw based upon what moments could best benefit from a Ukrainian perspective. And so if we didn't include your most favorite HasanAbi moment, we're very sorry. I wanted to include, for example, when Hasan talked about right sector snipers killing Euromaidan protesters, but we only could keep them for 2 hours, and I didn't want to have them there for 5 hours answering every single clip that Hasan has ever said about the war. So just understand that we could only do so much for practicality's sake and out of respect for the people that we brought to react to. I hope in the future when we talk about countries, we include people from those countries in the conversation more, whether it be Ukraine, Taiwan, Vietnam, Korea, Mexico, Canada, Iraq, or wherever it is. Let's include the people who actually have to live there in conversations on how that country should be treated and what the future of that country will be. Thank you very much for the video. So let's start by going around the room and everybody introducing themselves. Let's start from the left-hand corner of the room over here.
No, I'm Anastasia. I'm Ukrainian Anna on Twitter. I'm a volunteer. I live in Kharkiv and work mostly in Kharkiv. I also work with Dylan here to do interviews, subtitles, things like that. Work with journalists, go to the front lines, things like that. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm Rick the Ukrainian. I stream on YouTube. I also dub the interviews with Russian prisoners of war made by Zolkin and Karpenko. All rights belong to them. And also I am initially from Makivka, which is Donetsk neighboring city, and I lived in occupation, and I know that shit myself. So here I am. I also raise money for the armed forces of Ukraine. That's what I do. Thank you.
Hey, what's up? My name is Ivan. They picked me up on the street just now. I'm kidding. I don't have a platform. I don't stream. I have a Twitter, I guess. I'm from Western Ukraine, and I was involved in politics since like 2003 when I was a little kid. I was watching the news and all of that, and I'm familiar with Hasan for like since 2018, 2019. So I felt betrayed by him, by his takes.
That's going to be the next question.
He wanted to take it out from
Yeah, he was already jumping on the questions. I appreciate the eagerness.
Here's the moderation.
I'm Thompson. I stream on Kick, and I just cover the war. The reason I'm on Kick because we watch everything unfiltered. Russians exploding to bits, my favorite type of stuff. Of course, supporting armed forces of Ukraine, and yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, so I know that some people in this room don't have too much familiarity with Hasan's content, and some people in this room do have familiarity with Hasan's content. Ken, let's go around the room and see what familiarity everybody has. Anna, you've brought Hasan up before in an interview before on my channel.
Yes. So basically I discovered there's such a thing as political streamers and YouTubers when this war thing started in February, and I wanted to see what people are saying in the West. Will they support us? Will they not support us? What's their opinions about the situation? And I stumbled upon a bunch of people like Tucker Carlson type of people, but also Hasan, who is a little bit famous. And because of that I was very enraged of what I heard of him saying about Ukraine, specifically about Russian speakers and specifically about Eastern Ukraine and all of that.
Okay, what part of Ukraine are you from?
I'm from the East, Kharkiv. I was born there and I live there now. So yeah, I mentioned to you, to Dylan Burns, I mentioned that I hate what he said, basically, and I was very offended by it.
So going into this, you already know going into this that you disagree with
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
Could I ask you, Thompson?
Yeah, I didn't watch a lot of Hasan's content because it's very painful. However, I am familiar with some of his takes. I don't think I watched it out of context, so I'm not sure that I'm pretty sure I'm not misrepresenting anything. I don't agree with what he says. I don't believe Hasan even agrees with what he says. I feel like he's a big grifter, and he just, he's successful, and it's a big grift for him. So his fans listen to him, which is probably the worst part of that community is his fans, not even Hasan himself. But
Okay, so that would say that you two are definitely in the I'm not a huge fan of Hasan crowd going into this, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go to not the opposite end of the spectrum, but a different part of the spectrum because I wanted to get diverse opinions in on this. You actually used to be a fan of Hasan's content, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, I was watching Hasan since like 2018, 2019. He actually made me not think that leftist is a dirty word. I was like swayed from liberal to leftist by Hasan. I became more pro-worker and all of that, and I felt extremely betrayed when he took the side of the fascists, or like pretended to consider both sides and all of that. I was really hoping that Hasan would, I guess, analyze the situation about the Ukrainian war and maybe think about it, but now he just...
the only thing Hasan analyzes is how his chat reacts to what he said.
Yes, I believe...
It's crazy, chat. Oh, sorry. That's another.
So you would say that
XQC.
you say as a fan that the war made you no longer enjoy his content or watch his content?
I can't watch his content. Sometimes I watch like a podcast with Ethan to see Ethan.
The Leftovers podcast?
The Leftovers podcast. Yeah, to hear his bad takes, maybe to hate watch it, and to commend Ethan Klein for actually challenging and doing it pretty well for a person who doesn't know that much about the conflict.
Ethan
so props to Ethan, yeah.
I definitely need to listen to Ethan.
So you will later. We have clips from that.
Also.
Rick, are you familiar with Hasan's content? Have you ever watched his stream? Anything before today's interview?
No, I see him for the first time. I'm gonna see him for the first time. I mean, not him, but his videos, right? And no, so it's gonna be just a clean sheet.
Okay.
I don't know anything about him.
So since you're the only one in here who hasn't seen him before, I should say this, and for the people who aren't familiar at home, HasanAbi is a socialist Twitch streamer. He's the most popular Twitch streamer who covers politics on the platform. He gets quite a lot of viewers, both on YouTube and on Twitch. I don't know if it's true of every single online political commentator, but he is often referred to as the most popular political streamer, period. So the most popular political streamer. So that's why I wanted to bring you guys around today to see the type of commentary that we're getting from this person and to react to it. Okay, so here's a picture of him. You guys have been looking at it for long enough. So let's move on to the first clip. So HasanAbi, leading up into the war, we're talking about mid-February, he started increasing the amount he was talking about the war in Ukraine. Before then, he didn't really talk about it much, if ever. But as the war became closer, he started to talk about predictions from the American government that the Russians would invade. And I wanted to show you guys a few highlights of that to show you when the first critiques from some Ukrainians came forward for Hasan. Now, I don't want to focus on this for too long because this is somewhat old news, obviously. But I felt like if I didn't include this, I'd be leaving out some vital context of the history of his commentary on the war.
What's up, folks? I'm live and alive, and we got a lot to talk about. I was right about Ukraine. That's right. War is not imminent. Oh, shocked to find out. Anyway, we're going to talk about that and a bunch of other stuff, so get in now. Possibly a new React series as well, so you don't want to miss it. I think maybe I'll tell my editors to do this, but I think I'll just change I'll change this every day to Ukraine has still not been invaded by Russia every day. To make sure to make sure that the wishes of these fucking weirdo, like, I'm actually a sock them, and you're a fucking tanky idiots on the internet. Will, yeah, change it to Russia still has yet to invade Ukraine. And it's like day 11 at this point, you know what I mean? Time again that I don't think there is war that is going to happen because it would fucking destroy Russia. And I still believe that. That's true. Okay?
Yeah.
I like the part where he says, I was right about Ukraine. I bet he never repeated those words ever again.
Yeah, let me go off on that. Yeah.
Right.
The best part is somewhere there. I remember this clip. I actually saw this one. The first one I saw.
Okay, there's a few more clips where he's predicting before the war. Let's finish those and then we'll have a moment to talk about it.
You care more about being like, yo, HasanAbi, you were fucking wrong. I hope you all get drafted, dude.
Hey.
I hope you get fucking drafted.
Wait, are we going to war? I thought
No, but I hope they fucking drop your bitch ass, your fucking pasty little bitch ass into fucking Luhansk, okay? To defend Ukrainian sovereignty and its fucking borders, you dipshit. I don't want Ukrainians to fucking die. Okay? But you can.
So those are the clips of him predicting what was going to happen with the war. Do you guys have any initial reactions to his predictions about if the war was going to happen?
Oh yeah. So I think it's the funniest thing to listen now in 23 in what the hell is it, September? Yeah, so it's very fun. He was so convinced that the war was not gonna happen and so smug about it. And also the most interesting thing about him in that case is that he continued to talk about it. If I was him, after this blunder, I would crawl under the bed and never speak about geopolitics ever again. But not this guy. He continued to, double down, triple down. And yeah, it's very interesting. I wish I had this self-confidence, but...
I feel like the biggest contributor to his statement there is what America said, because America predicted what's going to happen, and he believes that, like, everything that Hasan says, just look through the prism, is America bad? And it's always yes for him. So America said something, but America is bad, therefore they're wrong, therefore I'm gonna take the complete opposite position.
To add just a little bit, he also mentions like people being hawks, people like, war drumming and being dipshits about it. He basically says like, you people are like making this up, like that you can't trust Western like Western like intel, you can't trust that, and Russia will not like do that. How could Russia do that?
Even though Russia did that in the past.
Even Russia did that with Moldova, Russia did that with Georgia, Russia did that in 2014, Russia,
with Ukraine.
Yeah, with Ukraine, Russia did that all over the place, but no, of course, Russia would not do such a silly thing. It's only the United States that does human, evil, imperialist.
And US intelligence has a good track record of being wrong.
Because it wasn't a prediction by the US, it was like actual intel, and there was actual information. Actually, before the invasion, I was coping. I believed that they wouldn't invade because it's too much for them. They would make a bite they couldn't swallow. So I agree with Hasan on the take. They wouldn't invade because it would destroy Russia. It is destroying Russia.
Yeah, he also makes it seem like people who are saying that invasion will happen as if they want the war.
Yeah.
Which is a very silly thing, because people are saying like, this will happen, you need to be prepared, you need to know that this is going to happen. And instead of that, he presents those people as if they're like, he even calls them like names, people who say that they are like fuckers who just want like the blood of Ukrainians or some shit. When people were genuinely saying like, this is 100% gonna happen. And it's not only, by the way, Americans, British intel also tell this. So yeah, it's it's very...
Our intelligence was saying.
Our intelligence was saying.
Someone like Hasan might say in response to them, like, well, but America with the weapons of mass destruction and all of the times the CIA has lied or America has lied in this way. And so, do you think there's any validity in him being as suspicious or reacting the way he was through a perspective of being suspicious of America?
I don't think so, because there's not a single intelligence in the world that always says the truth. Their intelligence. There's not a single government that was 100% correct on all of the things that they've been saying. But if you're going to compare both sides, like how many times Russia have lied? Every time they're saying something. Like if you're trusting one source over the other, you should show something like why do you do that? And it's only emotional for him.
Yeah.
As Hasan was saying what he was saying, the Russian media and the Russian diplomats were pulling the line about the Ukrainian weapons of mass destruction, the birds and the chemical bioweapons that target Russian genes, despite most of Ukrainians having a lot of Russian genes. We're not a ethno state.
My mom's Russian.
This is the same. There's the same bullshit excuse and to invade as the U.S. used against Iraq, but he was he neglected to mention that, I believe.
It's just, of course, every country, like every government, every intel organization, lies to some extent. But we can't both side this. You can't compare this to, especially when you have precedents of Russia doing this in recent years. Not like in 50 years or half a century ago, right? But like I said, Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, it's all happened recently. And where is the surprise? Where is the surprise in them lying and doing the invasions and annexations and occupations and war crimes and all of that? There's no surprise there. My parents are from Georgia originally, so I knew a lot about that. So it's just people just don't know or don't care. I don't know what his deal is, but
What's wrong with NATO expansion? If majority population voted in favor, would that mean NATO expansion is justified? In that circumstance, NATO is 1,000% an aggressor outside fucking force, okay? Russia is not. Russia annexing its own fucking territory that it's had, that its own territory full of its own fucking people is not the same as NATO being like, we're gonna turn your country into a fucking base and put literal fucking military bases and rockets into your country.
So, if you don't, the date here is the 21st of February. For those of you who don't remember, because just so much has happened with this war, that was 3 days before the invasion, but it was the same day that Russia formally annexed Donetsk and Luhansk, and so that is what he's talking about right now. And that's what he's saying that, expansion of NATO would make them the aggressor in the situation.
Can we?
Yeah, you can respond.
Yeah, we can jump on that shit. The worst offensive thing. Annex its own territory. Excuse me, what is Ukraine even? So this is the imperialist talk for supposedly anti-imperialist leftists who is all about fighting colonialism and imperialism when only the West does it. But here he basically claims that the territories that are officially, legally, in all senses recognized as Ukraine is Russia annexing its own territory with its own people. Who are its own people?
Well, he's obviously not anti-imperialist, right? Because he
claims he is.
Well, he claims a lot of things, but he claims he cares about Ukrainian lives too, which I don't think is true. But he was what? I remember at some point he had a USSR flag in the back of his...
and the hat.
In the back of his, So USSR, which is, imperialistic, was grabbing all of the countries around, and every country that was part of USSR except Russia hates anything connected to that. Wonder why? That was not the best part of the history. And Russia is desperately trying to restore that. They have anti-NATO rhetoric because NATO is the only thing that can actually stop them. The countries join NATO in response to what Russia is doing in the regions, and everyone just feels more and more uneasy. And this is democratic process. People want to be protected because look, we really wanted to be part of NATO precisely for this reason, and we weren't in the NATO, and they still invaded. Right? If not, Russia is saying that they're reacting to NATO expansionism, then why don't they invade NATO countries? Because they can't. And that's what we wanted for ourselves.
Also, can we appreciate that he basically said that NATO, with the agreement of the people, NATO placing bases there is worse than Russia literally annexing, occupying, and chunking off pieces of other countries.
Destroying cities, killing people.
And
it was bloody.
It's just insanity. What Russia does is old school imperialism, back in the day imperialism, and he somehow misses that.
Well, he would say that he doesn't, and this is something he does say on multiple occasions, that he doesn't support the invasion, and that he doesn't like the Russian government because he thinks that they're authoritarian and very nationalistic and extremely conservative.
But he seems for them.
Yeah, but then he starts to parrot the rhetoric and protect them.
They never support Russia. They all say, the invasion is bad. I don't support it, but we have to look at both sides. Ukrainians aren't saints either. Also, America aren't saints. By the way, he was saying the NATO grabbing territories and whatnot and putting their actual military bases, and I'm like, yes, please put the bases in.
Yeah, that's actually
We need the bases. Military bases were not strong enough.
It seems like the more people we have from other countries on our territory, the less that part is getting shelled.
Yep.
Like I believe recently there was a whole swath of foreign ministers in Kiev.
Yeah.
It was like a whole assembly, not a single siren.
I wanted to ask Rick quickly, because you are from Eastern Ukraine as well, originally Donetsk, if I remember correctly. Donetsk region, not Donetsk. Sorry.
Makiivka is actually a neighbor city of Donetsk, so they're like one big city.
So, would you consider yourself somebody that was displaced from there when you left, that you left in part because of the occupation?
Of course, only because of the occupation.
So the only reason that you left was because you were displaced then?
Yes, because I actually lived in occupation, and I know how it is to live under the new Soviet Union, because it is. Because they use all those methods of propaganda, of agitation, of, the human right violation. Yeah, they actually do all that stuff and even more. And the question was?
My question was, what do you think about when you hear those territories, Donetsk and Luhansk, referred to as, Russian people, the people that are still there, as their lands?
It's actually, it was the territory of Ukraine for the last 30 years, and it still is. Donetsk is Ukraine, and saying that Russia is grabbing their territories is a total bullshit, because they are grabbing the territories of Soviet Union, the empire that actually has collapsed, and this is total bullshit. People there identify themselves as Ukrainians, especially my generation. We wanted to stay in Ukraine, and if you didn't know that, half of the population of Donbas left to Ukraine. Actually, 2 million of people only registered, misplaced people, or displaced, sorry, the words. They actually had the Ukrainian position. At least half of the people didn't want to stay there.
For the record, if Ukraine was to take back Donetsk, would you go back?
I guess yes, but probably, to be honest, not in the first few years, because there's gonna be an adaptation period, an integration period of those people who lived under Russian propaganda for 9 years.
Let's pretend for seconds I hate Ukraine. I don't like it. I don't want to live here. I don't like the culture. Yeah, I know. I don't like any about it. I want to live in, let's trigger everyone, in France. The best place, right? So I want to go there. And I don't invite French people to occupy and tear a piece of Ukraine I'm living in. For me to live in France. What a reasonable person would do, they will migrate. They will move. This is not what Russians do. They ask for Putin to invade wherever they are, because they just want the place they currently live in to become Russia. No, never mind what everyone else wants. This me talking about separatists and genuine pro-Russian people in the eastern regions, for example, right? So this is not how it works. And I would also like to add the fact that Hasan here basically called me and Rick specifically literally Russians. In that clip, he called us Russians just because we are from the Russified areas that were
But that's Russian propaganda, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. That's where I'm going. It's the repeating of Russian narrative, because that's what Russians do. They say those people are Russians. They speak Russian. That means they're Russian. They're part of the Russian world. This is the imperialism, colonialism that this guy supposedly hates.
I remember a clip recently showcased on the internet by a military man, Ukrainian military. And he showed that Russians occupied a village, and the first thing they did is they renamed the village from Ukrainian name into a Russian name. They weaponized the language, and they basically, and that's part of what happens, right, in the eastern regions. And I'm sure you remember that there was a heavy push on Russian language, getting rid of Ukrainian language, and they're really, how many Ukrainian schools there are in Russia? 0. And they're pushing this thing with their language, with their culture, because then it is easier to let it grab.
Yes, that's what they did historically.
Yeah.
They destroyed. Russification was the which Hasan perhaps doesn't know. In eastern Ukraine, most people speak Russian not because they chose to, not because they wanted to, but it was not a choice. It was a political action started in Russian Empire days and continued to the Soviet Union as well. So schools were Russified, everything was in Russian. If you spoke Ukrainian, you were like pointed fingers and called rural, unintelligent, dumb.
There's a bunch of movies from Soviet times where Ukrainian language is being laughed at. Like if you're speaking Ukrainian,
you will not get a decent job.
You're uneducated.
For example, my
or
father
something.
didn't know Russian when he came to Kharkiv, and he had to learn it because he would never get a decent job whatsoever without knowing the Russian language. Without speaking Russian, you are not seen as a proper person.
I want to go to. Oh, he had a question as well.
Yeah.
This is a good question from him. You want to ask it?
So, by a count of hands, how many of you grew up speaking Russian?
Kinda.
So 2.5 of you guys grew up speaking.
My family was Ukrainian speaking, but then I was moved to town. Like I grew up in the village, and then I moved to town with my mom, and it was like then most of my life I spoke Russian.
Okay. Tops to finish this thing, then let's keep going because this is still the first clip.
Yeah, I think we're getting along.
One thing I'll add, just to summarize.
When you talk, it might be better for the audience.
So you couldn't hear me probably.
It was just not as good, but it'll be fine.
Okay, so just to summarize, I left Donetsk only because of Russian occupation. That's it. Let's continue.
Okay.
Throw the question marks all you want. I don't give a fuck about the Ukrainian constitution. I don't give a fuck about the Ukrainian border sovereignty that some of you dumbasses are fucking talking about like you're like a 3%er about for Ukraine. Okay? It's so stupid. Crimea is not the same as Kiev, however. Crimea is not the same as the rest of Ukraine, however. Eastern Ukrainian territories have a lot of fucking Russian people living in them because Ukraine, and just like Crimea and much of the rest of the fucking country, was a part of Russia, was a part of the USSR until not that long ago, okay? People's parents were alive back then. So obviously, there's a lot of fucking rich people living there. So if you have, but like, you feeling bad about the Crimean annexation does not change the reality of the Crimean annexation being a completely justifiable fucking act by the Russian government, okay? So that's it. That's fine. And Hitler invaded countries based on Germanic ties at first? Yeah, dude. Talk to me when he's fucking throwing Ukrainians in a fucking... What are you talking about? Talk to me when he's throwing Ukrainians at a concentration camp, okay? Hitler wasn't fucking bad because he decided to invade Austria. He was bad because he was fucking killing Jews, okay? That was the problem.
Really?
He wasn't like, oh yeah, we're gonna fucking annex territory with like Germanic people in it. That wasn't the main problem with Hitler, I think. That was like maybe 8th down the line.
Oh yeah, I think it's 8th down the line.
That was a lot. Who wants to get
Let me.
I'd just like to say that, again, he parrots Russian propaganda that we discussed just now by saying that Ukrainians who speak Russian are Russians, and that for some reason justifies it. But the main point I hear, I think, is he doesn't respect any international agreements in basically his statement. Because there was a lot of agreements on the sovereignty of Ukraine. There was every country in the world recognized it. There was specific agreements between Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine when Soviet Union collapsed. Is that a non-aggression pact, that we're never gonna fight each other. Then there was additional Budapest memorandum that kind of spoke about the same stuff. Him saying all of that just completely shits on all of those agreements. So like what, we should just sign documents and not do anything with them? And it seems like the only countries are the Western countries who actually keep their word. And this is why Ukraine is receiving, in part, why Ukraine is receiving a lot of support from Western countries, especially like UK, USA. Those were the countries that were part of agreements that pledged support. So
fuck Bush Senior, by the way. He pushed that for too hard. I oppose the denuclearization of Ukraine.
Inside, right?
I'm sorry, but yeah.
Just the amount of disrespect in that clip is just staggering. First of all, he doesn't respect us as a country whatsoever. So it's our sovereignty, our borders, doesn't care at all. So he assumes, like a colonialist he is, that if you used to be a colony of a country, you still belong to that country.
Yeah, right.
Supposedly, he would be self-determination guy, decolonialism guy, decolonize people, freedom, self-determination, but not when it comes to Ukraine. Doesn't care about Ukraine. Doesn't care about Austria that much, considering that comment. He basically says that they're Germanic ethnically, which basically makes it not a big deal that Hitler invaded and annexed it.
Because a lot of Americans don't know what the Crimean annexation has been like. They kind of checked out after it happened in 2014. What has the Crimean annexation been like for those of you who know people who have had either lived through it or have been paying attention more than, other people?
Well, basically, I know a bunch of people who escaped from Crimea when this happened. And those, to be honest, if we speak about the most, let's say, people who like Russia or liked Russia the best, that would be Crimea. Mostly because majority of people are Russian there, ethnically, which Hasan mentions. I don't know if you showed this clip.
I'm sorry, I don't think you should say ethnically, because a lot of Russians were sent there because they had a lot of military bases there as well.
Yes, but
because of the deportation of ethnic people.
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
So right now, the last time we had like this demographic, 60% was ethnically Russian in Crimea. This was the result of the genocide and deportation of Crimean Tatari, who were native people there, and because of that, they pretty much moved Russians there, and it became Russian majority, which is one of the ways Russia uses their population to have a cultural leverage and influence in certain area. So yes, most people there were not exactly like
so they're not
Ukrainian.
ethnic.
They're ethnically Russian.
Well, they are Russian, but they're not ethnic to the Crimean.
No.
yeah. Not
Their
native.
ethnicity
Not
is
native.
Russian.
Not native.
They're not native.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
okay.
true. Yeah, so they were moved there, and because of that, of course, there's a lot of Russian allegiance there, and many people were pro-Russian in a sense. But at the same time, liking Russia and is not the same as wanting to be part of Russia. And he said to Ethan that supposedly it was rigged, and supposedly he adds those words just to make himself an out. Yeah, but that's another story. Yeah, basically Crimea is justified in his words, right? Specifically because of the Russian majority population there, which again is appeal to ethnic arguments. You can't annex Mexico, can't annex a southern state where there are a lot of Hispanic people.
Texas.
He would not use this logic for any other country. He only uses it for us because he doesn't respect us and doesn't see us as a country.
May I add my reaction? What I've heard,
and then we'll keep going.
Yes. What I've heard is a person who doesn't ever consider happening this to him. Like, he never considers that this might happen to him in USA.
One quick question, and I don't want to stay on it too long, but do you guys believe that it's hard for Americans to conceptualize what's going on here due to their relative security?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
I
part.
guess so.
In some part,
Like, I am more critical, as of now, I am more critical of the Russian actions of yesterday than the American government is, okay? Just understand that. I am more critical of the actions that took place yesterday than the American government is. The American government that was agitating for war and said, banging the war drums, literally non-fucking stop, saying like Russia is gonna murder babies, they're gonna eat babies inside of Kiev. They're ready to eat babies, they have a thirst for blood. Those motherfuckers have now turned around and been like, okay, well, maybe this is not an invasion because technically they invaded 8 years ago. So maybe it's not an invasion.
What a misrepresentation.
No, this is a legitimized, this is the actual legitimate fucking invasion in comparison to the past 8 years of like Tim Pool after that 49 state landslide.
So he said this was the legitimate invasion, the annexation of Donetsk and Luhansk. That's what he's talking about in comparison to the last 8 years. That's what he said.
I just want to quick mention that while no Russians, from what we know, ate any babies, they did rape babies.
Yeah.
So just to correct Hasan there.
Also, he made the point and he made it previously and here as well. He said that, talk to me when Russians start throwing Ukrainians in concentration camps. Hasan, what say you? I mean,
The prisoners camp,
what say you? Like about Bucha, about Yahidne, which was literally the camp.
About alleged
about all of that. Please do tell. What's your opinion?
I would assume, I believe he has condemned those types of actions.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm going to push us forward because we're still on the first clip.
Yeah.
I would look like Tim Pool after that 49 state landslide if there was a active bombing currently happening on Kiev, and like Ukrainians were being murdered left and right at this moment.
You do.
I would be that way if America was like, we're going with full-throated, this is a full-blown invasion, and yet it hasn't happened. At this point, I have a more aggressive stance on Russian troops inside of Ukrainian borders than the American State Department does. So how do you pair up with
I like
that?
how he just defaults to America bad every time. It's just like,
Gotta push it.
okay, we're gonna talk about Ukraine, but first, America was fucked up.
Yep. Yeah, he does look kind of silly, won't you all say, about the bombing comment?
Not the first time he's wrong.
Yeah.
It's literally like they're doing a fucking W tour. They're like, yo, we're gonna predict the misinformation to false flag. Dude, okay, solve it. Solve the problem. What the fuck are they gonna do? Are they gonna go in? Are they gonna fucking fight back? Are they gonna like actually fly planes into Ukraine? Are they gonna send in the 6,000 troops at the fucking border of Ukraine? Non-believers like you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they got this one fucking. They got this one. Okay. At this point, if you are in a position of fucking power, you had every opportunity to fucking exhaust diplomacy. Instead of fucking endlessly being like, this is a war that's gonna happen, this is a war that's gonna happen. Okay, then fucking try to solve it.
Well, I would like kind of agree here, except I would agree on 50% here, because I believe that there should have been a stronger stance pre-war, and if that would be strong, it could potentially avoid the whole war. We don't know that, of course, and I don't think it was diplomacy. I think it would be like specific actions, sending weapons, perhaps even sending troops to prevent
More weapons than they did. More than
I mean, sure.
more
like,
than the javelin.
resolve, basically.
Or saying like even like pledging, like saying we're gonna send you like heavy weaponry, artillery, tanks. We will never back down. The same way they like Biden says, not an inch of NATO ground or something like that. I feel like that's a very strong statement.
Basically, if in 2014 there was not just a slip on the wrist, basically some sanctions.
Well, that was a complete success.
Yeah, but that was like a slip on the wrist. If that was like the reaction of the West might have been much stronger, even in words, but still more like condemning, promising us like some solid help, assistance. Maybe Russia would not have, but who knows? Maybe it's like there's no point talking.
Biden got himself to Russia because he was trying to negate the damage that Trump did when he fucked up the relationship with Germany and all of that, and the Nord Stream was built, and he was trying to appease Russia. And I remember his diplomatic mission to Russia, Biden's, was like, let's be buddies because China.
I like how they literally tried diplomacy and it didn't work, and this guy is just sitting. They should have tried diplomacy.
Obama was doing that.
We're going to talk about. He is going to talk about the possibility of Minsk 3 later.
Because 1 and 2 were great.
Let's talk
They
about
worked so good.
You could just take the L Ukraine. Wait, no, that's not what I'm saying. America has already delivered the L to Ukraine, okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying America needs to fucking take the L.
Of course.
Of course, yes.
That's all of this. There's one more pre-war clip I wanted to show you. 1 second.
So that Russian invasion bad, but America is worse.
America exists. L.
Yeah, big
So
L.
this was around February 5th. This was posted around February 15th. This is him reacting to a now deleted video by the Gravel Institute. The Gravel Institute was started by former staffers for the Mike Gravel campaign in 2020. For the record, I did actually at one point work on the Mike Gravel campaign. I just should say that for biased reasons. In this video, he's reacting to them talking about the threat of Ukrainian Nazism in Ukraine. Now, the Gravel Institute, due to critiques they received for this video has now been removed. I do want to put that out there for the record. But this is Hasan reacting to that and making a comparison to the Mujahideen, which were the rebel fighters in Afghanistan, extrapolating the idea that maybe if they fund Azov to fight Russia or fund the Ukrainians with weapons, it could lead to Azov overthrowing the Ukrainian government or some type of far-right takeover. But I don't want to put words in his mouth. You can listen to it yourself. Here it is.
For the record, this is exactly how it works in Latin American countries as well. This is exactly how it works in the Mujahideen being armed and being seen as like a revolutionary counterbalance to the fucking the USSR military forces in Afghanistan. Like, we have done this already. We've done this a million times over. This is kind of America's modus operandi, which is why I fucking hyper-focus on this and talk about it, okay?
Ukraine is... So he's saying that he hyper-focuses and talk about it. What do you think about the Mujahideen comparison?
I think that this is a perfectly fair comparison when you don't have a clue what you're talking about. You don't know the situation inside Ukraine. You don't know how these forces are represented in Ukraine. You don't know anything about Azov. You don't know anything about Ukrainian politics and like what people... Like, seriously, Ukraine was fully occupied during World War II by Nazis. Russia, like, it's kind of crazy because we were taught still like USSR history, and that it was said that the whole, like, half of USSR was occupied and Nazis were like very close to like the heart of Moscow and stuff. When you look at the map, they were like in the regions that are now being shelled by Ukrainian missiles. So like Belgorod, no, Ukrainian, Belgorod, like all these.
Yeah, closer to the.
Yeah, it was really close, but whole Ukraine was occupied.
In Belarus.
Do you really think that like there's a strong Nazi presence in Ukraine? Like, there is a nationalist presence, and the presence. I feel like nationalism obviously has bad connotations in the West, but it is only bad, I believe, when you're in a peacetime. Because what comes out of nationalism that way is usually like racism against people who are migrating to the country and stuff. You start to find enemies, but when your country is being attacked and there's a very clear enemy, and you kind of, people consolidate under a national idea, so that's absolutely fine. Under such conditions, but I completely
just a little bit of a context. I actually watched that Gravel Institute video before it got removed and lost my shit, because that was 100% Russian propaganda repackaged in English, like word for word, same words, like Nazi, America-sponsored revolution was a coup, was a Western-sponsored coup. Everything was in far-right people everywhere. So Hasan watches it in front of like thousands upon thousands of his viewers, basically nods to it, and then makes the Mujahideen comparison.
Oh, I do want to ask, do you think that when he was bringing this up on February 15th, as a possible reason maybe not to send supplies to the Ukrainian military, or that this could destabilize Ukraine, or it could end up like the Mujahideen with the Taliban? Do you think there's any legitimacy to that concern whatsoever?
Not whatsoever, for the reasons we mentioned, because far-right people, we have the democracy, we have functioning government. It's not like a gangs of far-right fundamental Islamists are running around and, fighting with each other. That's first of all. And second of all, this is an attempt to undermine aid to Ukraine. And so, the most interesting part of it is he is supposedly concerned that fascists and far-right people will come into power in Ukraine due to the aid and due to the America. But he's not concerned that fascists will come into power in Ukraine if Russia takes Ukraine. Not concerned about that whatsoever. Yeah, so he mentions our far-right people and the Western government sponsoring them, but doesn't say a word about what awaits us here if Russia takes over.
And he specifically said he likes to focus on it.
Yeah, and he says he likes to focus on America, not on the country that is actually invading and killing people in this country.
By the way, the aid that Obama brought and that Trump brought is like, it is laughable. And he opposes even that. So if you like, javelins are fucking great, but
Russia helped us a bit in the beginning, of course, but
Russia really targets Azov. In my opinion, it's because it is and it was one of the most effective units. And it was creating a lot of problems for Russians, especially in 2014. Thanks to them, they weren't able to take Mariupol back then, and they knew it was organized, it was strong, and it could really stop them. And that's what they really targeted that. Of course, like there's history of Azov where it was a guy who initially...
Zelensky has a bad rap, they used that as well.
But he also has bad rap among some other Ukrainians. Like it's not like a figure that is
he's no longer in control of Azov, first of all, and I would say is I don't know for sure, a Nazi back then in the day, but they tied to this history. Also, Russian used this narrative very effectively because they tied this whole Bandera thing that is long-standing, like accusations of all Ukrainians being
It's a
Nazi.
boogeyman.
Yeah, as well.
The guy who died in the Nazi camp.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that it was like I recently did research on that because I'm always asked about that. And the number of collaborations, the highest number of collaborations.
Wait, you had to do research about Bandera? Aren't every Ukrainian taught from that from school?
I have to know what's up. I'm being asked all the time and calling Banderite Ukrainian Nazi war all the time. So I gotta, play this up. So basically the number of collaborators was less than 1% in Ukraine.
Yeah.
We are talking non-stop about this Nazi problem, despite the fact that amount of Nazi collaborators in Ukraine was less than 1%, and 7 million people served in Red Army, and 5 million Ukrainians died due to Nazi occupation. And we have to deal with these people like that, watching videos of us and calling us Nazis. People who didn't suffer from Nazis, by the way, Americans, not nearly as much as Ukraine.
And people who are okay with us being subjugated and
Fuck
captured,
that shit,
right?
honestly, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. We're going to go on to the next video. So, today is the anniversary of the Kerch bridge attack when the Ukrainian military targeted the Kerch bridge, which connects, I know you guys already know this, but for the record, it connects Russia to Crimea. It was established in around 2015, 2016 by Vladimir Putin. It was built illegally in occupied land. And Hasan had a take after the bridge was targeted. It was targeted in order to disrupt Russian supply lines to the front, since it's a major supply line for the Russians. And Hasan ended up calling the targeting of this bridge a war crime. And so we're going to play the audio of his accusation, so you can listen to his own words.
It's a bridge where the Russian forces are being supplied, but it's also a bridge that connects Crimea to the Russian mainland.
That's how bridges
So
work.
you absolutely can consider it a war crime in the same way that when Russia blows up shit on the civilian infrastructure and claims that they're doing it for military purposes. It's just like bullshit. Not that it fucking matters. They literally blew up the pipelines, dude. They blew up the pipelines that were bringing in gas into fucking Europe. And it went nowhere. I felt like I was eating every crazy pill on the goddamn planet when I was talking about it. And everyone was like, Hasan, you don't have enough information for this. It's like, what are you talking about? You have to look to who stands to benefit in situations like this, right? So, ultimately,
Got confused.
Ultimately, it's ridiculous. And this is what happens every single time.
So he talks about Nord Stream a little bit at the end there, but you guys can comment on that if you want. But I wanted to start with the Kerch Bridge statement. What did you guys think about him saying that the targeting of the Kerch Bridge was a war crime?
Well, this is about the most stupid thing. We have heard a lot of stupid things, but this is about the most stupid thing, because in every war in human history, bridges have been the most legitimate, the most on-the-nose legitimate war target you can ever imagine. This is the bridge that was built illegally on the annexed territory, first of all.
Specifically for the military.
Yes. Second of all, for supplies, millions of videos of tanks, armored vehicles, artillery going through this bridge, us attacking that bridge in the time of the day where there was the least amount of people there possible. So it calls that and compares it, the worst thing, to Russians blowing up residential areas, blowing up hospitals, kindergartens. At that day, he commented on the bridge, just so you guys know. But this was the day when Zaporizhia was attacked. And the entire building was leveled, and more than 50 people died.
Yeah.
And he didn't say a word, but he said plenty of words about attacking a legitimate target and calling it a terrorist act and comparing it to actual terrorist acts. That's all I have to say about this.
And then deflected to the Nord Stream.
Yeah,
he likes to talk
and that's
about
it.
that.
They blew up, so basically accusing us.
Actually, like it's a fucking fact,
Yes.
proven fact, but it's not. No one knows
It's like when a teacher never noticed bullying in school, and some big kid punches the little boy,
Yeah,
and then
pretty
once he like strikes back, like, oh my God, what are you doing? It's the same thing. It's
I've been holding that opinion for a while.
He said it himself. It's used for military purpose.
Yeah, he does say it in the
That's it.
beginning. Yeah,
That's
in that sense, it's not a legitimate.
So attacking a military target is a war crime nowadays?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thank you, Hasan.
Well, thank you, Hasan, for letting me know.
You know, it's like the more times he like is proven wrong, his position moves like to the moves closer to the correct position. Like, you know, he like war is bad and all of that. But he always occupies like the most the most pro-Russian position that is maybe portrayed as believable to some people. You know, it's like invasion's not gonna happen. It happened. Well, it was provoked. No, it wasn't. But like, then Ukrainians make a war crime. You know.
That's what he does in most things I've seen, and that's why, for example, calling him like a pro-Russia person probably is not exactly correct. But he does play apologia for Russia. He repeats Russian narratives.
What if he's just stupid?
That's also a possibility, of course. Yeah, but he does do it, and intentionally or not, that's another question, right? But he does do it, and he plays up the narratives that harm us, that harm our country, that cause a lot of damage, especially considering the fact that he parrots Russian propaganda unchecked to millions of people.
Yeah.
So the clip we're about to watch is HasanAbi interviewing a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party's nomination. This is Marianne Williamson. She's considered very progressive for American politics. And they're talking about the issue of sending aid to Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. And HasanAbi, when Marianne Williamson indicated that she wanted to continue to support aid and support the Ukrainians, he started to bring up negotiations that happened during the start of the war with Boris Johnson and his story of events, interrupting and stopping the successful negotiations, basically avoiding a peace that could have been. Let's play the clip.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I guess I do agree that if the United States would withhold all arms from Ukraine tomorrow, that this would be absolutely devastating for Ukraine. I don't disagree with that. Except due to that reality, I think that they have a lot more power in the negotiations process in terms of like issuing a terms of ceasefire than, you know.
But what does that look like? I don't understand quite what that would look like. To whom? We don't have the power to dictate that to Putin. Who are you saying we're dictating this to?
That's why you have to have China at the table as well. But ultimately,
she went to Russia. We were hoping for that. I was hoping for that. Xi went to Russia. He spoke with Putin. Zelensky said, "Hey, call me." We were all hoping. Listen, I don't care who can come up with an answer to this, and we were hoping, and they actually ended up with these quite weak principles. So,
there was a 15-point plan negotiated in Turkey in the earlier version of the invasion that seemingly was a little bit more prosperous. Zelensky himself even conceded to pushing Crimea later down, to like a 15-year program for Crimea, where he would like have another democratic vote on how to best continue on with those negotiations. That all fell apart when Boris Johnson visited Ukraine, and I don't think that England has any sort of agency in this conversation beyond operating as a mouthpiece for the American State Department.
Of course.
So, what do you guys think of his retelling of the early negotiation and events?
I think there's two main points. The first one is two of those 15 points. I don't remember if it was 15, maybe it was closer to 10. But in any case, two of those were Ukraine is never in NATO, and we should demilitarize ourselves. Basically, have 50,000 troops and no heavy weaponry, if I remember correctly.
Recognize Donbas, Crimea, all the annexed territories.
Regarding the territories, I don't know, but it was like just those 2 points. It just basically don't have any protection for us. Like, obviously, your next step, we know what's going to happen. So that was the thing. And I remember that some of the points were agreed to, but not the main ones, which were like military and stuff. And that's what Putin and Zelensky were supposedly needed to discuss in Turkey. But Boris Johnson has nothing to do with it. I think the timeline is completely wrong.
Yes.
Johnson was after this agreement.
No. He was. The agreement started already. I researched that shit. It was in several parts, the agreement. And first of all, they couldn't agree on anything. So they said that there's no point. The next agreement was Zelensky was kind of willing to not postpone the Crimean question and maybe consider not being part of NATO. Maybe. Although all sides were saying that those negotiations are not going anywhere because Russians in particular were bombing cities at the time. They also made
Bucha happened, right?
Bucha happened a week after Boris. So
later.
Bucha is before Boris came, a week before he.
But it happened before the agreements got cancelled completely.
No, after.
After.
That's exactly the timeline I'm trying to establish, basically. So plenty of other people.
Bucha happened before.
Boris, yeah.
Yes, a week before Boris came. So basically what happened is this, that we were talking about this whole subject back and forth, negotiations, he presented as if we wanted it. We were just desperate. That's what we were trying to fix this situation. But many people, French Prime Minister, Estonian Prime Minister said that this is unreasonable before Boris came here. They said that Putin cannot be negotiated with. They said the same thing that Boris said. The same thing all of us already knew.
I remember reading that Boris' quote was very mild. He wasn't saying like you can agree on everything you want.
He quotes the Ukrainian Pravda article, which is our journal. Basically, they kind of rephrase what he said, and they said that he said you can negotiate with him. He's a war criminal. He didn't say this publicly, supposedly. He only said it backstage, basically. So that's what he's building upon this whole.
It's funny how Ukraine is so adamant returning all of the territories, but Boris Johnson just swoops in and changes
the power
everything.
Man. Yeah, also the funny fact is, again, disregards Ukrainian agency completely, doesn't care about anything, and also doesn't mention Bucha, which was one of the main reasons, actually, because we liberated Bucha the week before Boris Johnson came here, and Naftali Bennett, I think is the name of the Israeli guy who came here. He came here and he said there's a 50-50 chance of negotiation, but then he publicly said that after Bucha it's not possible. And that article Hasan quotes, first reason they say is Bucha. Second one, they say potentially the influence of the war.
I do think I should also say for the record that the article he's talking about is a Pravda piece.
And
it's an undisclosed private, we don't know who exactly source it is, an anonymous source, and I believe it was a second-hand source, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but he's so thirsty to jump on it, to accuse the West. He even calls England the mouthpiece for United States. He's so thirsty. Yeah, but people like Boris primarily because in Ukraine he was one of the most popular people, I believe, at the time, because his statements were quite condemning, basically, of Russia. He was not doing he was not doing the Germany thing, the France thing, all fraternal nations, brotherly nations. Yeah. He was not doing any of that. He was very straightforward. Putin is a war criminal. Ukraine needs our support, and of course people love it. So obviously, right? Because that's what we care about.
Well, it's this. Sometimes people misjudged. For example, Russian shills like to say Zelensky is an authoritarian leader, but no, he's a populist. He just our leaders don't rule Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people rule our leaders because Zelensky was pretty cocked as a candidate. I hated him as a candidate. He was pretty cocked.
Me too, yeah.
His platform was,
don't say it's the biggest Zelensky thing, be careful. Be careful.
Z.
Yeah. He's like Z, but big Zelensky.
But Zelensky platform was maybe we should stop shooting, maybe we should not respond.
But
don't retaliate.
But that was what that was the approach at the time, that we thought that it would look at the whole West. They thought that you could agree with Putin, and now Zelensky knows for a fact that you can't, and look how strong of a leader he is.
Guys,
it's fucking awesome.
Do you believe, as I believe, that Zelensky in the beginning of his term was too naive, and he really thought that he might stop shooting and everything will stop?
I don't think it was too naive. I think we all were naive because we were almost 8 years in the war, or we were in war with Russia from 2014. We just kind of fucking forgot about it. I'm ashamed personally.
Not
because
I didn't, but okay.
yeah, because I lived like as if that never happened, and
many people did.
And when this war happened, like to a lot of people, it was a surprise.
The only thing
even though it shouldn't have been.
I really don't like that Zelensky did that I can definitely point out was bad. Maybe it was a mistake on his point. Maybe he was trying to fix some stuff. But remember when at the beginning when Americans were like, Russia is going to invade, and he was like, why are you so in panic? Don't.
I don't think that was a mistake. I think that was a calculated
I think
move.
that made us look very, very good.
Can I ask you guys a quick question? Because I want to ask you guys two questions. But the first one's on this. Even though it's off topic, I think it's good because a lot of Westerners don't see this. How many of you guys, and I don't know if you want to share this, did you guys, who in here voted for Zelensky or didn't vote for Zelensky?
Absolutely.
No,
all
I
the way.
didn't. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You did it? You did it?
You
Did you
did,
vote for
yeah.
I
Zelensky?
didn't vote. I am ashamed of it. I am ashamed of it, but yes,
Look at him.
unfortunately, I changed a lot for the last
You're welcome.
2 years.
You're welcome, guys.
And you voted for Zelensky?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's get to the last thing. Now, this is a somewhat bigger one, but this is the whole reason we did this. So Hasan and his co-host on a podcast, Ethan Klein, also known as H3, started debating a whole host of topics, including Taiwan, and the topic of the Russian invasion of Ukraine came up. And Ethan knew that Hasan, had possibly been criticized for this before, and he wanted to hear his opinions, and they started going back and forth. And he talked about the Boris Johnson thing, so this is something he does still believe. He repeats this here.
Yeah, he continues.
This is months after the Marianne Williamson interview. And he talks about a few other things, like how weapons are just contributing to the bloodshed. And later we have some more stuff to show. I don't want to.
I'm sorry, Dylan. Before you push the button, please tell me you included the clip when he says you have to force Ukraine to negotiate.
I did not include that clip, but you can talk about it when
that's a gem. That's my favorite bit.
There's so much, and I have to make the tough calls.
Special mention, okay?
Okay, you can mention it if you want at any point.
Let's talk about Ukraine, and then that's my final one.
Okay.
So we were talking about Ukraine, and your position was that the support for Ukraine is 100% manufactured.
No.
That's what you said last time.
No, I think that all matter of American foreign policy is greatly influenced by manufactured consent because of our interest in, doing whatever the fuck we want to do there. Whether it be like bringing Ukraine into the Western sphere of influence, or it's not genuine because they want like genuine emancipation for Ukrainians.
So last time you guys compared it, you said, well, nobody gave a fuck about Georgia when that got invaded. Therefore, the fact that anyone cares about Ukraine feels like manufactured.
It's not even just Georgia.
Well, you guys know but you guys realize there's like a massive. I didn't know anything about the Georgian War. I learned about it. There's a huge difference. You guys understand?
Well, I mean, the scale
it was a 5-day war.
Yeah, it was 5
They
days
expected Ukraine to
versus-
drop in 5 days, and if it did, we probably wouldn't be talking about it.
that's true. That's true.
So, like, what happened was Ukraine mounted this miraculous defense, and they've got Russia, a fascist country, on the back foot. And we all like when fascism.
I don't think Russia is on the back foot. I think it's just like extending the harm.
Well,
and only furthering
we
conflict.
inflicted so much.
Okay, so
Remember in the first video he was saying Russia would never invade because it's gonna get destroyed.
Yeah.
Now Russia is not even on a back foot. They're like doing well.
Because now he pushes the narrative that if supporting Ukraine now will only prolong the war.
Yeah.
So it will, he's on another train right now.
what do you think about that? Because that's something that he's against. You said this before, and they talk about this during this, but he's against aid because he believes it prolongs the suffering of the Ukrainian people. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, also the manufactured consent bit, I think, is one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as well, but let's start with that one.
Absolutely stupid, silly thought. People here are so anti-Russia, so they're anti-war in a sense that they want it to stop, but only on our terms of getting what is ours. And if we're not going to have weapons, there's just going to be way more Ukrainians that are going to die in pursuit of that. Yeah. And there's nothing the West can change about that. There is nothing.
Sure. If we surrender, let's say America forces Zelensky to surrender our territory, okay, the hot war will turn into, first of all, a concentration camp. Ukraine is going to be just a concentration camp for Ukrainians.
Like an open air prison, you mean?
Like an open air prison. And second, the war will not be over. It's gonna be just guerrilla warfare. You know, it's gonna be car bombs. It's gonna be assassinations. It's gonna be
Something similar to like the Irish Troubles, maybe?
Sure. Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
that ironically, if Zelensky gonna do that, he's doomed. Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, proponents would.
Yes.
Actually, let me ask that question quick before we turn over to you. If Zelensky was tomorrow to say, for peace, we're giving the Russians Mariupol, we're going to give them Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, Kherson.
We won't let them. That's the thing.
We and
Ukrainians
the
won't let them do
soldiers,
this.
I talk with them a lot. They will never go.
They are we together. We all Ukrainians.
We are all
I
people.
think Ukraine did a fantastic job in their informational campaign for the war, in drumming up support for Ukraine, but also kind of explaining to Ukrainians what this whole thing means, and that Russia will never stop, and we have to stop them here and now. That we're kind of like the whole population is so. I feel like they didn't want to repeat the mistake of 2014, because they know if it's not gonna finish right now, it's gonna happen again. I think just population will just never agree to that.
Yeah, because we have this experience since 2014. We know how it is to negotiate with Russia. It's useless. It's fucking useless. And those negotiations in the beginning, the first days of war, it was just a fucking ultimatum from Russia's side. They never stepped back on a single point, you know? That this is fucking useless. And giving something up to Russia, it's not an option, and we all Ukrainians understand that.
And also, I would like to point out that I hear that a lot, not only from Hasan, but in general, that many people who are peaceniks, so to speak, who are pro-peace, they say that violence needs to stop, and they do this gross appeal to like Ukrainian lives. I worry about Ukrainian lives, and I would like to point out that stopping the war right now does not stop the violence. Our area, part of Zaporizhia, Donbas, all of those areas are still occupied. People are still suffering there from imprisonment, from torture, from rape, from all sorts of abuse, and leaving them, people in occupied areas, is leaving them to suffer. And it's not going to stop the violence at anyhow, even if we, it's just...
Would any of you say that living under occupation is a type of peace or any?
No. I prefer being bombed.
Yes.
And I live in a city that is bombed.
But that's a hypothetical that is very stretchy, because like even let's say people are living under occupation, there won't be peace because Russia broke every peace deal they made.
Yes.
Because it started. Remember Ilovaisk? We negotiated the Green Corridor, so our troops were pull out. They shelled the shit out of them.
Most Westerners have no clue what happened.
Yes.
I feel like you can ask any Ukrainian, so I'll just ask Ukrainians over here. Would you rather live in Ukraine that is currently under war, or would you rather live in peaceful Russia?
Ukraine,
I feel like Russia is a prison camp.
Yeah.
Exactly. I feel like you ask any Ukrainian.
Not even a question.
I do want to talk about the second thing he mentioned, and that was manufacturing consent. This has to do with a novel written by Noam Chomsky, who is a known American socialist author and
Ukrainian, by the
philosopher. He's a
way.
linguist.
And his grandpa is Ukrainian.
He does have a
Ukrainian
background.
Doesn't say again.
But this is an extension of an argument he's been making, which is that the reason why America supports Ukraine isn't because of our love for their struggle of freedom, but because we have self-serving interests, maybe something like we want oil in Ukraine, or we want, to expand NATO, we want to bring, Ukraine into, the Western sphere. And so his argument is, it's cynical. We're doing it for selfish reasons, and that's bad.
I will say, I heard you say, I think, when we watched the clip, you said, who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Who cares? That's my argument. I don't care what motivation is of our allies. If they help us with liberating ourselves, with preserving our nation, saving ourselves from annihilation as a nation, right?
Yes.
I don't care.
I do care, but I feel like it's also important to understand what is the motivation. And I feel like the motivation that Western countries have are completely justifiable, completely normal, and I would agree with them, and I would want the same for my country.
Yeah, in principle, I don't care. If someone the country I don't like gave us aid, I will accept
no,
that.
even the countries that I do like.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that if their idea is to not let Russia expand further,
that's good for us,
to secure the territory so that they would be secure in every scenario, we also win.
Yes.
So I don't.
Not only us as well, Georgia, Moldova, other countries.
True. And it's a very simple argument. We already saw that from 2014. Russia doesn't stop unless it's stopped. If nobody's gonna stop them, if US is not gonna give weapons, US is far away, so you may feel secure unless you look at the other side of the map and then you see that Russia and the US are very close to each other. But if Russia is gonna capture more and more countries, it's gonna grow. Their imperialist influence is gonna grow, and you never know what might happen next. Maybe they will.
Yeah, they talk about Russia. Hasan talks about it a lot, like multipolar world order. Yeah. So basically, he's like Russia, America, and China, and things like that. And dude, if we understand, all of us here understand, there are bigger players, right? Ukraine is not one of those bigger players. I so much prefer the Western influence and the Western way of doing like imperialism or whatever he thinks they do, right? Or they do in reality. Because when American imperialist, he says, I debated with people, and they're like, they will install like their like McDonald's or some shit. It's already here, by the way, but that's their idea of imperialism. When Russian imperialism is my father being in bits on the balcony. Also quite important to point out that people bring up things like Vietnam, like, things like that happened half a century ago.
Where two parts of Vietnam fought each other?
Yeah, not to mention the fact that what Russia did is recent. Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, and not to mention the fact that he doesn't respect, you already said it, doesn't respect sovereignty and borders, so he doesn't care. But there is a big difference between...
So you're saying Hasan would be okay if America took part of Vietnam?
Probably not. So basically he doesn't make a significant, huge difference why people, speaking of manufactured consent, one of the reasons why people are so interested in Ukraine, genuinely, right, is because wars like that are rare. Especially in Europe, when there's ground invasion, when there is occupation, when there is annexation of the territory, when you grab the territory and you make it your own, you place a flag there. This is rare in 21st century, at least in Europe, pretty much anywhere, to be honest, right? And I don't understand how, again, proclaimed anti-imperialists cannot see the huge difference between those things. Not to say that American invasions were all based and amazing, obviously not. But it's a big difference.
About the manufactured consent, as much as it breaks my it breaks my heart that Georgia was like rolled over in 5 days. It breaks my heart that Moldova was partly occupied by Russians in Transnistria, that Chechnya was like leveled and all of that, and the world couldn't help them. But like I thank God every day that this manufactured consent like benefits us. We are like first of all rich, second of all our geopolitical
big.
We're big and we're like border Poland separate Europe from Russia.
I will also not remove our amazing generals who did stop Russians. Our politicians who did scream to the
people
whole world
well,
that is happening.
Yeah.
I think
both Poroshenko and Zelensky.
There's a lot of
journalist work as well.
Thank you guys. There's a lot of moving parts.
Ethan is based, by the way, because he's like that. Georgia was taken like in 3 days. That's why we don't talk about it.
And he's sassy. He's good. Well.
And if Ukraine was
flattened by 5 days.
Leveled in like a week, we also would not be talking.
That's what Russians plan. Precisely because of that reason, right?
Let's go a little bit further.
Yep.
There's still more we gotta watch with this, and then I want to ask a few questions at the end, so I want to leave time for questions.
Yep.
And I stand with the Ukrainian people because I think Ukraine is a force for good in the world. They're on.
Can I just stop you for a second? Because you said 100% manufacturer consent. Like
that's what you said.
Nothing is genuine. I said 100% manufacturing consent is a leading role in this.
If you want to amend
the reason why the reason why I take issue with this is because it's like stating like I don't give a fuck about Ukraine. Of course I give a fuck about people in Ukraine. I want the war and the bloodshed, the unnecessary bloodshed to end. Okay, my assessment on the situation might deviate from NATO, like bloodthirsty NATO defenders or whatever.
You feel like we shouldn't even be doing anything in Ukraine?
No, I don't.
Nothing.
No, I don't. I think
you don't think so.
I think that of course there's a necessary intervention that must happen. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I've fucking raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Ukrainian refugees. Like, I'm sorry, this is such a silly fucking thing that, like, not from you, but I hear so much from dipshits online.
Well, let's
want to fucking cut propaganda.
So you can say exactly
suck my dick. You know?
So you do believe that America's actions in Ukraine are the right ones?
I think that America's actions to a certain degree in Ukraine is understandable. It's reasonable, certainly what the Ukrainian people want. But I think America's interest in Ukraine is not genuine. It's not genuine emancipation. It's more so a continuation of the bloodshed, which is demonstrated not by me, but by American politicians like Chris Murphy, who have openly said on the record that for 5% of our military budget, we've been able to cripple a foreign adversary's military budget without a single American service member dying in the process.
What?
I would say that is profoundly successful. What are we doing in Ukraine? We're sending our refurbished old weapons and weapon systems to Ukraine. We have to replenish those weapon systems. It's a never-ending cycle.
Because the reason I ask is because there seems to be somewhat of a sentiment in the leftist circles or social. I don't know how to even describe it. I don't know, but that the proxy war people say in Ukraine is unjustified.
It is a proxy war.
No, I know, but they're saying we shouldn't be supporting Ukraine and the whole.
Do you guys want to comment on anything?
Yes.
It's not a proxy war.
It's not a proxy war. Get fucked. Proxy war is when two major powers they don't participate in the conflict. If Poland was sponsoring us and we were fighting with Belarus, who was sponsored by Russia, that would be a proxy war. Russia partakes in this war.
Syrian civil war is a proxy war.
Well, he is again moving
Vietnam and Afghanistan were proxy wars. Korea was a proxy war.
Anyone who's saying that it's a proxy war doesn't recognize us as a nation, right?
And Russia, by the way, as well. Apparently, who is their proxy?
Oh, China.
Multipolar world for Hasan. Any war is proxy war.
I know one guy using the word multipolar world every time he speaks. Do you know that guy?
Well,
his name is Putin.
Yeah, he does talk about that. Yeah, that's true.
I do want to ask because he says he brought up that idea of it prolonging. Is there anything else you guys wanted to say on that?
He hides, by the way, his power level when he talks with Ethan quite a lot. You can see the difference when he talks on his own stream and when he talks with him. He even lets
Because he gets pushback.
Yeah, a round of applause for Hasan right there. He actually, first time in his life said what Ukrainians seem to want. He added,
Ukrainian people.
But he did mention the want of Ukrainian people for once. Thank you, Hasan. Good job.
I'm not clapping.
What would you say to he talked about, for example, he brought this up that he's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Ukrainian refugees.
I think that's good, but it's not a shield for you to hide behind every time that you're being pushed on life.
Do you think that's how he was using it?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. He was using it to counter.
No. You mean like did he?
Is that how he when he brought it up?
Yes.
Was he using it to defend criticism?
No, I think his help to the refugees was genuine. At least I don't have any reasons to doubt it. But he brought it up here to counter that Ethan brought up that many people accuse him of being like anti-Ukraine basically.
Yeah.
So he said no. I
don't know if he did it as a shield like the donations. So in the future he could use it. I can't peek into his mind. In this conversation he used it.
And not to mention refugees specifically. He always says like refugees helping people. You know what the best way to help Ukrainian refugees and Ukrainian people? Military aid. Stop our country from fucking falling apart because of Russia tries to do it. That's the help you need to get.
The thing is, if US and the world will stop sending us military aid, we won't stop fighting. It doesn't mean that we will be
He's implying America should only help like refugees, humanitarian aid, never lethal aid, because weapons prolong.
Because people like him say that lethal aid prolongs the conflict, it brings violence.
No, it makes it shorter. More weapons.
The shorter the war for us, the better.
If we had all the weapons we have right now before Russia attacked, do you think it would even happen?
that would be better.
Right.
It's like, why don't you die faster so the war ends and just die faster.
And the whole thing.
Yeah, I
Russia
can't.
should just take Ukraine. And
No,
do
I
that.
can't speak for other. I can't speak for other leftists. I don't know what the fuck they say, but plenty of those people also despise me and say that I'm like not pushing Z or whatever. So it doesn't fucking.
I thought I heard Richard Wolff have some kind of thing like that.
I can't speak on Richard Wolff either. There's disagreements that I have with Richard Wolff. You had
Okay,
like.
so you're down with what's happening. You're down with what's
I'm not
happening.
down with what's happening in Ukraine because I want the bloodshed to end, and the only way to do that is by bringing China to the table, bringing America to the table. The real actors here.
You think Ukraine should make some secessions to Russia?
I think the original.
I heard someone say the real actors here. Was that something that?
Yes, that's the talk of imperialist multipolar
Can
person.
somebody explain why they don't like that terminology?
Because he makes a claim that we should bring China, we should bring Russia and America to the table. Real players. Ukraine.
Who really decide?
Yeah, Ukraine by that logic is not a real player. What are we even? I don't even know. That's what they say quite often.
Maybe that thinking is going to change when Russia's going to lose.
Probably. Who knows? Yeah.
Let's see.
6-point plan that was a continuation of the Minsk Accords that were tried twice and failed twice would be a far preferable situation than like endless bloodshed over inches of territory where people are being fucking slaughtered.
I don't think the Ukrainians would describe it as inches of territory.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, you're saying they're fighting over inches of territory. I don't.
He's just saying in the context of how stagnated the war has become. Like the back and forth is pretty much ground to a halt at this point, and it's
this is what I mean. It's like a very cynical interpretation of what I'm trying to say. It is inches of territory physically when we speak about it.
But I guess I think Ukrainian people get angry when they hear you talk about it because they.
That's understandable. I mean,
they
I get
feel
it.
like you're
pretty stupid.
They want full-throated support. They want and expect full-throated support, right?
They understandably want that, and they want more than that. They also wanted Article 5. They wanted full NATO protections and NATO nations.
They don't like that you say that they should secede territory to a fascist invasion.
It's not even secession of territory. It's like prior agreements that neither party has held on to. The real Ukrainian.
I'm sorry, we had prior agreements before Minsk.
That's false equivalence.
I did want to bring up quickly. He proposes as an alternative to continuing sending military aid to try to push the Russians out of the country with force.
With the real players.
A Minsk 3. So, like you guys already know, Minsk 1 and 2 was an attempted negotiation between the Russians and the Ukrainians to try to find some peaceful solution for the Russian invasion after 2014. Both failed.
It was demands from Russia.
Yeah.
He is saying now it should be there should be a third Minsk version of that, a third attempt at that. What do you guys think of that?
Well, you failed 2 times. Let's fail
I like
one
how
time.
he's referring to agreements where it obviously benefited Russia more
Yeah, it was coercion.
as the agreements that we should stick to, rather than the agreements that we had decades before that was fair on all accounts.
I'm not sure that he knows that.
And Hollande, the Prime Minister of France, who, by the way, wrote an amazing memoir of negotiations in Minsk. You have to read that. He described the behavior of Putin and Poroshenko, how they fought all night, how Putin refused to acknowledge the truth that Russian troops are in Ukraine, and that's the biggest part of that we were forced to finally sign that agreement, which doesn't recognize Russian forces in Ukraine, but agreement was signed by Russia for some reason. And then they were like, we're not in Ukraine, so we can't do anything. You have to talk to the
Third parties, DPR, LPR, people.
Yeah, actual republics, who didn't have any agency. And he said that both parties, Ukraine and Russia, broke the Minsk Accords. Okay, when you are shot with shrapnel, with artillery, with grads, rockets, and all of that on a military position, you have to retaliate, shoot back from the position you just found out the shots were shot from. Otherwise...
Counter battery fire. Counter battery fire
is like, it should be done because
What you're saying is basically Russia broke agreements as well.
Yeah.
Russia broke agreements, we retaliated, and he's like, oh, both are equally bad. Okay.
Yes, both
As
sides.
for the
Yeah.
both sides thing, I do have one more.
Wait, just about the thing that
Sure.
Ivan said. This is like this. When this main thing about the Minsk thing that didn't work out was the fact that one of the main points was, just as you said, to remove foreign formations, foreign armies from our territory. And Russia did not only they didn't do it, obviously, they at the time said that there are no Russians there. Just
Never
as they
were.
did, just as it lied Hasan moment. The Weasley little liar dude. He was a Weasley little liar, Putin, because he said, but there was nobody in Crimea Russian. They were, we know that now. There was no people in Donbas. By the way, Utkin was in Donbas. Girkin was in Donbas, Russian military personnel.
He was even saying, he was recalling how they were forcing people to vote during referendum in Crimea under the barrel of the gun, which he was holding.
Even Putin himself afterwards, of course, said that there were indeed Russian troops there. But but Hasan plays it up as this, we are equal in this regard. Why? Yeah, it's just very, it's both-sided and make it seem like both sides, he even says this, I think, both sides are shelling each other.
So this is the last clip. This is from the same podcast we were just watching. This is him talking specifically around Minsk and why it failed and the war in the Donbas.
How did Ukraine violate their agreement?
There was mass shelling on both sides, like back and forth shelling. No, back and forth shelling that has been happening since 2004.
Okay.
With 13 or 14,000 people dying.
Okay, so
in totality. So at the time there was a agreement called the Minsk Agreements. There were two versions of this, which neither side agreed upon, which meant that LPR and DPR would still remain under Ukraine, but would have autonomy. Okay. And Ukraine understandably did not want this because that would mean that Russia would have an outsized control on Ukrainian affairs and Ukrainian politics, which it already did through Russian loyalist leadership that they had. That was obviously squashed because there's always been this back and forth between Western influence in Ukraine, wanting to move them into the Western sphere of influence, and Eastern influence, Russian influence in Ukraine, which wanted to maintain Ukraine's status and wanted to change Ukrainian affairs.
Okay, so they were both attacking each other, and you think the attacks were equally provocative? And again, I don't know anything about it.
I think that this was another instance of proxy war, 100%.
Okay.
Like, there are people who wanted to be a part of Russia, and at the end of the day, though, like the reaction from the Ukrainian government to that was understandable. They wanted to protect their own interests. They wanted to protect their own borders. They wanted to protect their hegemony and national security interests.
I don't understand. If people want to be part of Russia, they can go to Russia. We don't want to be like part of Poland or part of Germany. We want to be Ukraine, and we want to live like our neighbors in the Europe. And
So the first thing I wanted to ask about was his shelling on both sides in reference to why the Minsk Accords failed. How would you guys react to that comment?
It's a Russian.
Russian narrative, pretty much. Yeah.
It is a Russian book, you know. It's like their 8 years of bombing of Donbas children, you know.
I think the agreements were not upheld. I feel like it's very difficult, especially in that region during that time, to determine who did it first. We can only
we know who invaded first. That we know, which he doesn't mention.
We can only guess who broke them first, especially if Russia was saying that their troops weren't even there. So
in this situation, you have to give perspective when you talk about. You have to mention the invader, who is the invader, who did the first, who attacked first, who broke the legitimate borders first, who annexed territory. You have to mention that our actions are retaliation. Not to mention the fact that Minsk, as you said, was forced upon us by both Russia and the West. It was a diplomatic, so to speak, solution to the problem that cannot be resolved diplomatically, because we're dealing with the actor Russia, that is a fascist country hell-bent on imperialist expansion, and that does not keep its word on anything.
Yes.
So how do you negotiate with people like that. You can only negotiate with people who uphold the negotiations.
And what is the mass shelling on the best?
Yeah,
what did we mass shell?
He makes appeals. He talked about it in previous clips. I can mention.
Does he?
He basically makes appeals to this 14,000 number. All Latniks do. It's
the 14,000. It's like every casualty.
Yeah, it's Russian forces. It's separatist forces. It's Ukrainian armed forces. They sometimes make a claim that 14,000 is civilians killed by
Ukraine. I know that. They do that.
Yeah, they do that. And in Gravel video, pretty much things like that happen. And 3-something thousand civilians.
I also want to mention that separatist forces are basically Ukrainians, a lot of them who are forced to fight against our own countrymen. And this is like a huge tragedy that is still happening today. Thousands and thousands of people are just grabbed off the street and forced under the barrel of the gun to go.
And imagine that, like, if you were 10 years old in 2014, when
they scrambled.
Let's say your father was conscripted. By now, you would be conscripted and sent to war to die to Ukraine, and you were a Ukrainian child, you know.
And I wanted to ask about, at the end, Ethan asked a very interesting question, because when they talked about the shell on both sides, he asked, was it equally provocative?
Yes, good question.
Which kind of got to the heart of the issue of Russia invading and then being shelled after they invade the country. And Hasan chose to not answer the question. He then said, well, it's a proxy war. He didn't answer why, if it was provocative or who was more provocative.
I think it's pretty clear now.
Why do you think he didn't want to answer that question?
Because the answer is not
what
he would like to say.
Probably he doesn't know anything about it.
He didn't have one, so his line is like, both sides.
Or he knows and he just doesn't want to say.
I wouldn't go so far as to go this stupid. I think this allows him to preserve the narrative, basically. Yeah. He already stood on this narrative for a year and a half now, and he really needs to both side this to somehow show himself as not a pro-Russian, invasion person, but also always return the wheels to the fact that it's somehow America's fault. In this exact video that we will not probably be watching, he basically talks about the nukes, about Ukraine giving away nukes due to Budapest Memorandum Agreements, where Russia and America were both guarantees of our sovereignty, supposedly, and he talks about it and he says Ukraine should not have given up nukes. There's a bunch of conversation there about that. But then he was like, if you don't have nukes, America will come and fuck you up in the context of Ukraine and Russia. I apologize, Hasan. Who came and fucked us up because we don't have nukes? I'm pretty sure it ain't Yankees.
Now we've watched well over an hour, maybe an hour and a half we've had about dialogue and review of Hasan talking about the war. Obviously, I've shown you certain clips. This isn't the breadth of everything he's ever said about the conflict. But from what you have seen here, knowing that this isn't everything, and there's probably moments where he did sound better, or he might have, had different perspectives that you might have viewed differently. What do you think about what he has said and what you have seen?
Can I start?
Sure.
In the shortest way possible, Hasan is a Russian apologist. He repeats Russian talking points, Russian propaganda, Russian narratives to a lot of people in his audience. He's the biggest streamer, I presume, political streamer on Twitch at least. And what he does harms Ukraine. It undermines people's support for Ukraine. It's very, very damaging. And he also does not recognize us as a people of, who have will of their own, who have values of their own. He basically repeats imperialist talking points. He only talks about big countries, big players in that, American exceptionalist, if you will. And he only talks about that because he genuinely doesn't care or doesn't understand that other people exist and wars in Europe and Asia existed way before American states, United States existed. And he's just very either blind or he's straight up doing this on purpose, basically. Undermining. And also, of course, he both siding like crazy to reduce accountability of Russia in that sense and to place blame on another actor, which would be United States, because he has America bad brain rot.
We live in a world where his words directly impact lives of Ukrainians. And he doesn't contribute anything good And like because of what he said.
You don't think there's anything he said on Ukraine that has been valuable?
The amount of stuff that he's parroting from Russia is just to thousands and thousands of people. He just contributes absolute negativity to like our livelihoods, basically, of people in this room. Because if our lives are currently dependent on military support of our country, if we didn't have military support, some of us may not have been here.
Yeah, definitely. Should I say? Okay, so I see a person who actually who is so far from understanding what is happening here and what we are going through, and who actually doesn't think that something like that might happen to him, as I said before. So all those Russian propaganda narratives, he's repeating them, as Anna said, definitely playing for Russia, maybe, who knows, probably unconsciously, I cannot judge here, but he definitely works for Russia and harms our situation and our lives. Maybe not consciously, but something he says actually affects the aid. It could affect the aid because he has definitely hundreds of thousands of people, as you said, guys, listen to him. And I actually would propose him to speak to Ukrainians more, to listen to Ukrainians more. Of course, I've heard something that he doesn't probably know that we existed, that he doesn't, he thinks that we are still part of Soviet Union and that we need to be gathered back to that shithole. But we are here, we are Ukrainians. Talk to us if you want to know more about this shit, about our personal experience.
So I just want to ask like a bunch of rapid questions, get you guys quick responses. First off, how does it make you feel to know that he is the largest political streamer in existence?
Disgusting.
And somehow disappointing, to be honest.
I feel betrayed, because I used to watch him.
Yeah, it is upsetting because of the just sheer amount of the audience he has. If he was like a little YouTuber, little like streamer, I wouldn't care that much, to be honest. But in his case, he does have genuine influence over people, of how they vote, of how they think, of how they really vote for the politicians.
I mean, he had a presidential candidate.
Yeah, not to mention like that. Yeah, she would probably obviously wouldn't win, but still, he has a very big reach to people, and because of that, he's spreading either straight up Russian narratives or very old, like colonial, back in the day, Russian imperialist talking points, Soviet Union, apologia, all of that is very dangerous, not only to Ukraine, but to other people here as well, Georgia, Moldova.
All in Europe, and it's dangerous to all in Europe because the more prominent Russia becomes, and the more evil shit Russia does, the power of far-right parties in Europe, everywhere in the world rises, because the alternative for Germany is have great support.
Le Pen nearly won.
Le Pen nearly won.
Yeah.
We only got 2 minutes left here, so I want to ask one last question. And the last question is, for the people who watch his content, would you say that you would expect them, if they were to just get their opinions on the war from watching Hasan, and a lot of people do get their news, whether it's good or bad, from political streamers, that they would have a good or bad or some other type of understanding of conflict? Would it be a good understanding, a bad understanding, something in the middle?
It would be horrendous understanding.
Watch me instead.
I do encourage people to watch, Dobson, Dylan. he knows what's up, he knows, he has been there, and he's one of the American people who I genuinely think understand what is going on here and also cares, which is quite important. And also, for example, people like Lonerbox, who is my favorite lefty, and he is very great in covering what Hasan talked, like debunking it, and if anyone from Hasan's audience is actually interested, they could watch Lonerbox's videos and see what's up.
Or they could follow Anna on Twitter.
That's also true.
Or they could watch Rick on YouTube, or they could watch Thompson on Kick.
That's right.
Anything else? We good? Anybody want to say goodbye?
Bye-bye.
Bye guys, thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching this Ukraine Uncensored interview. I hope this first-hand testimony of the war in Ukraine helped you better understand those who are caught in the violent throes of history. We have a bunch of other videos interviewing those affected by the war on the ground in Ukraine that you can check out on my channel. If you want to help fund my work so I can do more interviews like this in the future, please support me at my Dylan Burns TV Patreon page. I have a second YouTube channel called Dylan Burns Live, where you can see my videos from my live stream, which you can view on my Twitch or on my website, dylanburns.tv, every weekday from 6 p.m. EST to midnight. And if you want my hot takes or photos from my time in Ukraine, check out my socials, including @DylanBurns1776 on Twitter and DylanBurnsTV on Instagram. All links, including a community Discord, are in the description below. See you guys next time.